Part 210. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2093. Manbao responded and asked, "Fourth brother, how much did you earn today?" "Not much," he shook the cloth bag and smiled, "the ones who sell to other families in the yard make more money." On Thursday, Lang sold the meat at a high price to each family, and he also set a high price when he brought the meat to the market, but seeing that the whole market was sparse, there were no two people selling meat, and those who wanted to buy meat people walked over and over in front of the stall, and most of them asked the price and didn't buy it. Thursday Lang didn't know what was wrong, and he lowered the price as soon as his brain twitched. He said, "Fortunately, the half that was sold in the morning made some money, otherwise I would have to lose money on this trip. After doing business for so many years, this is the first time I have done a business with such an obvious loss." Manbao squinted his eyes with a smile, and said, "It's not a loss to be happy for the new year." After thinking about it, Shizuo Lang really thought, "Although I feel bad for a while, I feel better in my heart, I don't think about it, and I can sleep well at night." He said, "So many medicinal materials have been donated to the county government before, and it is not bad for half a cow." Manbao was convinced. The two brothers and sisters walked slowly to the yard where they rented. There were few people on the street, and there were occasionally, and they came and went in a hurry. Most of them wore masks similar to those of Joe Man and Thursday. This thing has become as necessary as the clothes on people's body, and in the winter, wearing a mask can also prevent the cold wind from blowing, and it can also isolate the epidemic, so it is easy for everyone to accept it. The mask on Manbao's face was newly made for her by Mrs. Kui. It was made of high-quality fine cotton and made several layers. She had a bunch of orchid embroidered on the outside. It was very beautiful, and the inside was also very close to the skin. Once it gets dirty, it can be used again after washing and drying. Walking all the way, most of the people on the street had white hemp hanging on the door, and when they entered the alley where they rented, there was less white hemp. Because this piece is mainly rented to passing merchants, but this time, many merchants passing by also died. Xiaohu city has been lifted from the ban, and those who have checked that there is no fever and acne can leave the city. Therefore, many merchants are packing their luggage and planning to leave home after the 30th of the new year and the second day of the first and second days of the new year. Those who are still alive have to send the ashes of their companions back to their hometown, and the remaining money must always be explained to the parents, wives, and children of the hometown. So Manbao walked all the way and could vaguely hear the cries of people, all of whom were crying companions. Thursday Lang was used to it. He took Manbao's hand and walked quickly. He reached the door in a few steps, pushed open the door and went in. There was a large pot in the yard, which was bubbling with heat, and the smell of meat continued. "Emanates from within." He laughed and scolded, "I said that the alley is full of the smell of meat, so you are cooking here." The third son smiled and said, "They have to cook in the kitchen." They disliked that the soup was too big, so they moved it to the yard to burn it. "Fourth brother, would you like to taste it?" "It's good, the bone is so big, it's good to boil it for a while." "Don't open the lid, the fragrance will disappear in a while." Bai Shan and the others haven't come back yet, they have been sorting materials in the county government these days. Although there are many rooms in this courtyard, there are also many people. Manbao and the others do not live here, but in the place arranged by the yamen. But the food in the yard was better, so Manbao and the others came back to eat every now and then. Sister Lu Sunyang and Zhou Lejun were busy in the kitchen. Manbao took off his cloak and slipped in. Then he was stuffed with a big bowl of meat. "The steak that has been stewed since the morning, can you taste it?" The stewed steak just came out of the pot was still hot. Manbao took a careful bite, his eyes brightened, and asked, "Is it made by Sunyang?" Zhou Lejun immediately said, "I'm burning fire." Zhou Liru opened his mouth and could only say, "I added water." Man Bao burst out laughing, nodded, and said, I know, you all worked hard. Bai Shan knew that there was delicious food in the yard today, so he called brother Hall and Yin Or together after the office, and the four slipped back to eat delicious food together. Chu Yulang was at a table with them, and while serving soup for them, he said, hurry up and make up before you go home, you two have become so thin, but we are fat, when we go home, we will be red to death. Zhou Lejun agreed with a face, and gave his aunt a bone with a lot of meat. Man Bao stared at the white radish in the soup and said, I want to eat radish. Thursday Lang put the radish in his bowl, and said generously, I'll eat the radish, you guys eat the meat quickly. Man Bao. Bai Shan held back his laughter, took a piece of radish for her and said, fourth brother, the radish in the soup is better than the meat. Is that so? I think meat is still delicious. Zhou Lejun also thinks so. Everyone happily ate a meal, and Bai Shan asked Thursday Lang and Xiang Mingxiu, when are you going to return to Beijing? They can leave at any time now. In fact, if Man Bao and the others were not in Xiaoshu City, he would have left when the Yamen officially opened the city gate yesterday. Although it was Chinese New Year, he felt that he couldn't go home anyway, so what was the difference between celebrating the New Year in Xiaoshu City or outside Xiaoshu City? It's better to go home earlier, maybe you can catch up with the seventh day. But Man Bao and the others were still here, so Thursday Lang stayed and asked, when are you leaving? After calculating the time, Bai Shan said, the Lantern Festival will be over as soon as possible. If the news from the capital is slow, it may take the first month of the month to go back. On Thursday, Lang frowned, there is still a month, or even longer, not to mention how many business opportunities will be missed, that is, how much money they will spend if they eat or do nothing. Bai Shan also knew that it was not easy for him to raise a large group of people, so he said, fourth brother, you should go back after the New Year, and also report a letter of safety to the family, so that the family can rest assured, we are here on orders, naturally return as ordered. Thursday Lang knew that they couldn't be together, so he sighed, turned his head and said to Xiang Ming, then let's talk to the landlord, we will retire the yard in the third year of junior high school, we will leave after collecting our things. Xiang Mingxiu nodded, and couldn't help but ask about the situation outside Xiaoshu, I wonder what the situation in other states and counties is like. Bai Shandao, the news we got is that it's all under control, and most of the smallpox patients in the capital are also cured, so it's not a big problem. After you get the documents, you can go back with confidence. Thursday Lang said, tomorrow New Year's Day, remember to come here for New Year's dinner. Man Bao said, I don't think so. Imperial Physician Lu will invite all the doctors to have a meal, as well as students from the Imperial Physician's office. Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru also said that they could not come back. Next chapter in half an hour. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2094. Not to mention Bai Shan and the others, they said, Master Yang also wants to reward the righteous people who came to help, so he can't come back. In fact, 2 banquets counted as 1 banquet, except that the doctors sat together with the doctors, and the students from the Imperial College and Chongguan Hall sat on the other side. It is said to be a reward feast, but there are very few things to play, and the main thing is to sit together and talk, and then eat some delicious food. This time, General Gong, who had been ill for a long time, finally recovered. He brought General Gong Shao to the banquet, and many officials also brought their families. Man Bao was sitting in his seat eating slices of meat, and a maid came over to invite her, Emperor Zhou, my wife invites you to meet me. Man Bao looked up at her and found that he didn't know her, so he asked, who is your wife? My wife is the third wife of the Gong family. Man Bao smiled and said, it's her, is she with Madame Yang now? Yes, several ladies are there. Imperial Physician Zhou please. Man Bao nodded, got up and nodded with Lu Sunyang, and then went to the place where the female family members sat at the back. As soon as she appeared, the female relatives who accompanied Kui's family became a sensation. Several familiar young women stepped forward and took her hand and laughed and said to everyone, "This is what we call Zhou Xiaoshen, you see, she is not a genius doctor." Kui didn't expect that someone would run to the front to invite Man Bailey. She couldn't help frowning. She glanced at the maid at the entrance of the hall, stepped forward and took Man Bao's hand from everyone's hands, and pulled him to her side. He smiled and said, "Don't praise her so much. Although she has good medical skills, she is still a child. You praise too much, be careful that she is arrogant and complacent." Someone sneered and said, "I'm afraid not, I think this imperial Dr. Zhou is very smart and has a big idea." The noisy young ladies fell silent for a while, looking at the speaker. Seeing that it was Mrs. Chen, it was hard to speak. This Madame Chen's family and her husband's family are both big families in Xiaoshu City. Half of the shops on Mingsheng Street in front are either her husband's family or her family's family. Moreover, there are also people in the family who are officials in the court, but they are only in the field. Kui Shi still held Man Bao's hand and pushed him back neither softly nor hard. Mrs. Chen has never even seen my sister's face, but she knows her well. She is really smart and has a big idea, otherwise it wouldn't be like this. When it was dangerous, you took the initiative to ask for orders to come to Xiaoshu. Your parents have been talking about you a lot, right? Man Bao smiled slightly and said, "That's not true. They are very reasonable. They know that this time they came out to save people, and it is also the emperor's life. Although they are worried, they still let me out." Mrs. Kui gave Mrs. Chen a meaningful look and smiled, "Uncle and aunt are really reasonable." Mrs. Gongsan finally spoke, and smiled, "No wonder you can raise such a beautiful person as Zhou Tai." So the atmosphere became lively again. Mrs. Chen wanted to speak, but a lady on the side pulled her and shook her head slightly, whispering, "What are you doing to offend her? She will not be working in Xiaoshu City in the future, and she will go back to the capital after this time. No one knows when such a genius doctor will ask her to come to her door in the future, and such a person must know a lot of famous doctors. Even if they can't befriend them, they can't offend them." Mrs. Chen lowered her voice and said, "Second sister, how could I not know, but I just can't swallow this breath. Back then, I asked people to invite her. If she would come, my genre wouldn't. Hey, it's all life. Think about how many people died in Xiaoshu City this time. If you had sent genre to another hospital a few days earlier, you might have saved her life." Mrs. Chen's face changed slightly, and she shook off her hand and said angrily, "Second sister, my family's genre is about to discuss marriage. How can I live in other courtyards outside? Those places are mixed, men and women live together." Although she said this in a low voice, everyone was not far away, and because of her anger, her voice was still a little higher than before, so someone still heard it. Most of the people in this room holding Manbao with enthusiasm are people who have been treated by her in other courtyards, or someone in the family who has been treated by her, or daughters-in-law, or sisters and mothers. When Mrs. Chen said this, she seemed to live. People in the other courtyard were doing something bad, and everyone was suddenly unhappy. Mrs. Gongsan had been enduring it before, but now she couldn't bear it anymore, and she asked with a sullen face, "What does Mrs. Chen mean? I will live in the number 1 courtyard, and many people here have gone, the girl is serving there, and there are access controls for entering and leaving the hospital, clean and innocent. What did Mrs. Chen think we were doing?" She sneered and said sarcastically, "This is really dirty." It was heard that Mrs. Chen and sisters were a little embarrassed, but seeing Mrs. Gongsan's sarcasm, Mrs. Chen couldn't hold back her temper. "The third Mrs. is so articulate, I don't know what your situation is in the other courtyard." "Yes, I've never been in, just thinking about a yard where a man from a foreigner lives on one side, and even a messy family in the south and east of the city can live there, and on the other side lives a woman's family. When washing clothes, they are all mixed together. Mrs. Gongsan's face was ugly, and she felt uncomfortable just thinking about it, so she became even more annoyed. Yang Heshu was talking to General Gong, and when he heard the noise in the back hall, he couldn't help raising his head to look at Wan Tian. Wan Tian bent down slightly and was about to run to the backyard to see it, but before he had time to run to the backyard, a girl trotted up and whispered a word in his ear. Wan Tian's expression was strange, and after a pause, he went to report to Yang Heshu. His voice was neither loud nor low, just enough for General Gong and Xiao General Gong, as well as Bijia and Chang Shi next to him to hear, "Master, Mrs. Gongsan and Mrs. Chen are fighting in the backyard." Woke up. Yang Heshu, General Gong and General Gong Xiao. On the other side, Bijia and Chang Shi, who were talking, were also stunned. What did the fight mean? Yang Heshu wondered if he should take a look. This was the first time he had encountered such a thing, so he hesitated. However, General Gong did not hesitate much. He turned his eyes and glanced at Gong San, who was already drinking with someone at the table below. He stepped forward and dragged him aside and said, "Your daughter-in-law started a fight with someone. Gong San had a headache. Who did you fight again?" "From the sixth family." "No, Mrs. Chen." Gong San's eyes were about to pop out. No, then, that person is much older than us. Anyway, your peers, you should go and have a look, just don't play whatever you want." Gong San hurriedly ran to the backyard. Yang Heshu hesitated for a while, then got up and went to the backyard to plead guilty. He is the master after all, so why should he take a look? Man Bao and Mrs. Kui hid to watch the fun, and saw Mrs. Gong San grabbing Mrs. Chen's hair and pulling hard. She felt a pain in her scalp. She hissed twice and asked Mrs. Kui, "Sister-in-law, is it really okay not to stop?" Kui said, "It's all right, let them fight, I'll just cry later." As he spoke, he asked the servants to pull the frame, and said, "Don't let Mrs. Gong San hurt her face. It's pitiful, she only recovered from her illness, and her body is weak." So the servants understood that when they were pulling the frame, they were pulling Mrs. Chen. Pulling the side frame so blatantly, it was the first time that Man Bao saw him, and he was stunned for a while. I wish the book friend a green leaf a happy birthday, more and more beautiful, and happy every day. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2095. It's easy to miss a fight, especially when so many people are fighting together. I don't know who it was, and slapped the lady who was pulling the fight first, so the scene became even more chaotic. When Gong San and Yang Heshu went to the backyard, the number of wives fighting with each other in the field had increased to 6 or 7, and the maids and old ladies couldn't hold anyone at all. Kui was holding Man Bao to the side, watching with relish. When he saw Yang Heshu coming in, his face changed suddenly, and his whole personality changed. Instructing the maid and the old woman to pull the person, "Don't hurt Mrs. Gong San, hurry up and protect Mrs. Chen, oh, hurry up and separate the people." Yang Heshu frowned, turned around and told Wan Tian, "Go ahead and call some servants." The servants in front were not the servants of the Yang family, but were employed by the county government. They usually did some rough cleaning and kitchen work. They had great strength and great energy in their hands. When they got off the field, they immediately divided 2 by 3 and 5. One person grabbed a wife's hand and dragged it out, quickly pulling everyone away. Kui Shi breathed a sigh of relief, and couldn't help wiping her tears. The tears really fell, one by one, and she said to Yang Heshu and Gong San with a look of guilt, "Master, My concubine has betrayed your trust. Third Master Gong, I'm really sorry, the third wife was shocked today. He immediately went to all the wives to apologize, not to mention Gong Sanyi, even the wives on the field couldn't say she was wrong. It was too sudden, they were going to fight, how could Kui Shi alone be able to stop it? Kui was very considerate and asked the girls to help the affected wives to go to the backyard to wash up. Because Yang Hesha dispatched servants from the front to pull people, the male guests were worried about the accident, and many people came in to watch. They saw with their own eyes how these wives fought, but for their sake, they quietly retreated after seeing the servants separate the people. But there were still some ladies who saw it, and knew that the ugliness had been seen by others, and she was instantly ashamed and angry. Kui Shi kept the people in the backyard to wash up, and stopped Man Bao from going to see their injuries. She smiled and said, "You are both a hero and a distinguished guest tonight, how can you be tired? Anyway, it's nothing. Seriously injured, I'll ask someone to find some ointment for them." Man Bao nodded blankly. Gong San was used to it, so he said a few words to his wife, and then threw his hand back to the front banquet room, for fear that Mrs. Chen, who was beaten badly, would ask him to settle accounts. When he got to the front, he thought for a while, and went to Mr. Chen to apologize with a glass of wine. Master Chen didn't go to the backyard at that time, he just heard that there was a fight in the back, and he didn't take it to heart when he saw Gong San Lai's apology. Get well with his brothers. If it was before, Master Chen would not have looked down on Gong San. Although the Gong family is in charge of the defenders of Xiaoshu, and Xiaoshu is indeed an important town, but there is no war now, and the Huiye are all included in the customs. As long as the Huiye and the Turks stop rebelling, there will be no war in Xiaoshu for decades. The Gong family is just a defender. There are so many sons in their family, they join the army as soon as they are adults, and there are not many good jobs at all. In comparison, the Chen family has gone the civil service path, and the world is much wider than the Gong family. But this time, Yang Hesha's fault was all at fault, and the Gong family was at least half of the credit. If it's time to move out, maybe it will really come up. So Master Chen was a lot more polite to Gong San. Seeing that Master Chen took his wine, Gong San happily lost another glass of wine, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, but he thought to himself, as expected, what the elder brother said was right, if their Gong family did nothing, then they would stand by forever. Xiaoshu. However, most of the Xiaoshu Tiandi shops and some businesses that go in and out of the customs are run by the Chen family and the Song family. Not to mention money, they don't have power either. The children and grandchildren see it as soon as they are born. Their family is not good at reading, and it will take at least 30 years to provide a scholar who can become an official. 30 years later, they're all dead. To be honest, Gong San compared himself and didn't think his son and future grandson would be good candidates for reading, so he should join the army. But if they want to have a future in the army, they can't stay in Xiaoshu all the time, they have to find another way. Looking at Master Chen like this time their family is going the right way, right? Sure enough, what Mr. Yang said is right. If you want big profits, you have to take big risks. Mrs. Kui went to appease the wives, and Yang Heshu also went to apologize to the male guests. Man Bao silently returned to his seat and sat down, grabbed chopsticks, picked up a piece of rotten mutton, and ate it. Imperial physician Lu glanced at her and asked, "What happened next?" Man Bao shook his head and said, "It's okay, it's just a fight." Imperial physician Lu and the others, "It's alright after a fight. Fighting is nothing to worry about, but what's the problem is Kui's original like this?" Yang Heshu was also affected. He still trusted his wife's abilities. He didn't think she couldn't control the situation, so he still, because she wanted them to fight. So after seeing off the guests, Yang Heshu curiously went back to see his wife. Kui also knew that he couldn't hide it, and before he could ask, she said, "They didn't take me seriously. I'm the host tonight, and the girls and women outside are all arranged by me. But the Gong family can get over it." I asked the girl to go to the front hall to invite someone, not to mention the Chen family. The little clothes were sent to the backyard by their family. She smiled slightly and said, "I think since they don't treat the county government as a foreign country, they should just let them be their own home. They can make trouble as they want, and they can get rid of their anger." She looked up at Yang Heshu and asked softly, "Husband, did your concubine harm you?" Yang Heshu thought for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. "No, today's events are not bad. On the contrary, the quarrel between the Chen family and the Gong family was somewhat beneficial to him." Yang Heshu lowered his eyes and thought for a while, smiled slightly, and said to her, "But I think Man Bao is quite frightened. You will send someone to deliver her something tomorrow. She is still young, so don't be frightened." Kui Shi burst out laughing. "I see her watching with relish, but she doesn't seem to be scared." Man Bao was really frightened, but at this time, he described the fight in the back house with Bai Shan and the others with relish, and exclaimed, "Sister Yang is very different from what I knew before. I always thought she was soft, weak. I didn't expect to come to Xiaohu. She has become as sturdy as Tang Suiseo." Bai Shan smiled and said, "Shuexian Yang is very popular. Didn't Tang Suiseo say that the noble girl in Beijing almost broke his head for him? She can stand out and finally marry Shuexian Yang, because she is Kui Shi. The reason for the girl is, but don't forget, her mother died early, and now her stepmother is in charge." See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2096. Man Bao had never seen the fight in the back house at the gate of the mansion, but Bai Shan had experienced it personally, and it was no easier than the fight outside. How can Kui be a stupid person who can defeat so many people to marry Yang Heshu? Bai Shan, she has restrained her edge before, but she just doesn't need it. Man Bao is smart and understands after a little thought, so who made her so angry and showed her edge? I know. Bai Erlang raised his hand and said, "Senior brother cleaned up the back house some time ago. Although there is no evidence, it is not guessed that it was the hands and feet of those families. Among them, it was Chen who changed Chi Geer's clothes." Family. Not only Man Bao, but even Bai Dalan became interested, and asked curiously, "So it's really artificial for Mrs. Yang to be infected with smallpox?" Bai Erlang scratched his head and said, "I don't know. All I know is that my sister-in-law found a lot of things at that time, all of which were set on fire, but she later contracted smallpox. Maybe she was careless at that time." Stained. For something like smallpox, someone sneezes in a place, and after 10 days and a half months, someone passes by that place, and maybe they all get infected, so this kind of thing is uncertain. Who knows if Kui Shi accidentally got it when he was looking at those things? Bai Shan knew more, and hesitated for a while before saying, "No." Everyone looked at him together. He said, "Someone changed a piece of fur in the warehouse. It was cold at the time, and Brother Yang was out and about all day. Madame Yang was worried about him, so she wanted to make him a knee pad. After the smallpox, she dismissed a lot of the servants in the house and let them go home. The people who served close by were brought from the capital." Bai Shan said, "There was not enough manpower, so she went to the warehouse to find fur and knee pads by herself. Before it was done, she fell ill, so everything she touched at that time had to be put away, and some mammy felt that there was a slight difference in the color of the fur. Since the closure of the city, Mrs. Kui felt the hostility of the local wealthy clan in Xiaohu towards the couple. She also knew that many people were sick at that time, and the city's traditional medicine was limited. Dare to despise people. After the closure of the city, she dismissed several employees in the county government, leaving only some trusted people. Later, it was discovered that someone was doing something in the backyard of the county government office, ranging from the clothes that Yang Heshe brought back from outside, to the children's items. Kui didn't dare to slack off, especially since Ggeer was still young, so he worked hard and sent out some people. He was vigilant day and night, and found a lot of questionable things that were sent in. During that time, she restrained Ggeer in the house, and surrounded him like iron buckets. Yang Heshe tried not to go back to the backyard. Most of the time, she rested in the county government's study, and occasionally needed to talk to her. He was talking from a distance through a door. It's been like this for a month, but who knows that the problem is in the warehouse that is not very open. Bai Shan said regretfully, then the doctor found a little dirt inside the fur, it should be pox pulp, but unfortunately the backyard of the county government was understaffed at that time, and it was also a little chaotic, and when they found out who put it in it's gone. He added, it's got smallpox. The others were startled and couldn't help but say, what a poisonous mind. Bai Shan nodded, it's very vicious. If that knee pad is made, not only Madam Yang, but senior brother Yang is also very dangerous. Although Yang Heshe goes to the hospital shed and other hospitals to see sick people every day, he is actually very careful and rarely comes into direct contact with patients. Just didn't get stained. But if he was carrying an item that contains smallpox pox pulp, even Brother Chi is hard to escape. If it wasn't discovered early, Mrs. Yang would have hugged Brother Chi after she got sick. Bai Shan lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, so Brother Yang doesn't really want to leave Xiaoshu. After returning to Beijing, regardless of his merits or demerits, it would be easy to transfer him out of Xiaoshu. The emperor should also consider that he offended most of the local nobles, and will transfer him for his safety and future local affairs. But leaving like this always feels shabby. Bai Shan raised his eyes to look at the file on the desk not far away, and said softly, if you don't leave, then there will be a lot to do. After being silent for a while, Man Bao said, I want to discuss the method of vaccination with Imperial Physician Liu. If it is feasible, I would like to request a study tour in the western regions to find the real method of vaccination. Bai Shan's eyelids twitched, others didn't know it, but he knew it. That kind of acne method was not passed down from the western regions at all, but they copied it from a few words in a pile of books. Thinking of the dozen or so sheets of paper they copied down, he asked, do you want to try the human acne method first? The book mentions 1 or 2 sentences that cowpox is safer than human pox, but compared with the detailed human pox method, the cowpox method is really just a few words, and it often appears when it is compared with human pox, but there is no specific comparison. Just saying that cowpox is safer, less toxic, and better to grow than human pox. Man Bao is not worried, he doesn't know, but he is worried anyway, so how can I find it with only a few words like this? Bai Dalan casually asked what vaccination is, then he became more and more serious, and finally he was refreshed, if this happens, it will be a great merit. He was all excited, but after being excited for a while, he pressed the idea down. If Man Bao and his cousin go to the western regions, his stupid younger brother will definitely go too. There are only 2 brothers in their family. So Bai Dalan finally sighed and asked, how do you plan to go, but you can find out where the method came from? Didn't you want to go to Jiaokang before? Is it far from that? Bai Erlang just stared at Bai Shan and Zhou Man. Others don't know, can he still not know? That method of inoculating pox was not something I heard about after arriving in Xiaoshu, it was clearly copied from a book when they were in the capital, he had read the manuscript. Hey, by the way, what book did they copy from? No matter, Zhou Man has so many medical books, who knows where he copied them from? Bai Shan bit his head under their eyes and said, it's a coincidence, it seems that it came from the area of Jiaokang. Even Bai Dalan couldn't help staring at them suspiciously, what a coincidence. Bai Shan and Man Bao nodded together, then stared at Bai Erlang. Bai Erlang had no choice but to nod under their gaze, and pursed his lips and said, "Isn't it, it's a coincidence." Bai Dalan, "Okay, you can justify it yourself." Yin or thoughtful on the side. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2097. The winter in Xiaohu is too cold, and it is a big New Year's Eve, and there are no adults watching, so they naturally won't keep watch all night, so after talking, everyone goes back to their rooms after the fire is finished. The three of Bai Shan and the others lived in the county office early, so not only was the house near, but the yard was also near. When they were far away, the three of them muttered in a low voice, "I knew you were not at ease. Is that kind of acne method reliable?" Man Bao said, "I'm researching, it will definitely be reliable, and teacher Mo, he has recently found a lot of smallpox prescriptions for her, although they are not very useful." Bai Shan said in a low voice, "Don't talk too much, just leak some of it with Imperial Physician Lu. After returning to the capital, find someone to try the pox method. By the way, have you collected the pox scabs?" "Don't worry, I'm sealing it up, so it won't leak." She kept a lot of it in the space, and she could just go back to the capital and take out a small bottle. Man Bao planned what to say when facing Imperial Dr. Lu. The next day, he slept in and went to the next yard to find Imperial Dr. Lu with confidence. Imperial Physician Zheng had just taken a shower, and when he saw Zhou Man, he said hello without hesitation. "Why is Imperial Physician Zhou so early?" Man Bao looked up at the position of the sun. It was the first day of the new year. The sun was shining brightly. She thought she was late enough, but were they later than her? Man Bao looked puzzled. In the old Zhou family, only children would sleep in late. In her memory, from her parents to the second and third brothers, they all got up early. Well, her fourth brother and below are not included. Man Bao looked around and asked, "Where's Imperial Physician Lu?" Imperial Physician Zheng pointed to the room next to him and said, "I haven't woken up yet." "What are you looking for? Isn't the other hospital already on duty?" "It's not about the other hospital." Man Bao hesitated for a while, not bothering Imperial Dr. Lu to sleep late. "When Imperial Dr. Lu wakes up, tell him that I have something to do with him, and I'll go to the study in front of the county government to do some work." Imperial Physician Zheng, Imperial Physician Zhou, today is the first day of the new year. Man Bao, so what? Dr. Zheng, aren't you going to take a break? Man Bao said, "This is neither at home nor in the capital, there is not even a shop outside, neither family members nor going out to play, how can you rest?" Dr. Zheng, "Isn't it fragrant to sleep?" But to Zhou Man's gaze, he still swallowed the sentence, "Forget it, he can't teach young people bad, he should be a little more aggressive at such an age." He was already awake, but Imperial Physician Lu, who just didn't want to get up, still couldn't sleep for long. As soon as Zhou Man walked away, Imperial Physician Zheng knocked on his door. "You can't even pretend to be awake." Imperial Physician Lu murmured and got up. "On the first day of the new year, even if it's an external business, you can't be so tossing people, right? Is there anything I can't talk about in the afternoon?" Imperial Physician Zheng smiled and said, "I heard that Imperial Physician Zhou and young Master Bai are collating data, probably for the sake of writing a book." Not only did Yang Heshu want to report the number of deaths and the number of cures from the epidemic, but they also asked the Taiyuan hospital to submit a report, and even only focused on this aspect, focusing on prevention and treatment. Imperial Physician Lu was the chief officer of the foreign mission this time, and he should have written this book, but he doesn't have much experience in writing essays. In the past, Xiao Yuanzhang and Imperial Physician Lu, and even Zhou Man's Hang had more essays than him. So Imperial Physician Lu thought about it, and went to the front to find Zhou Man. Zhou Man was looking for him, but it wasn't about the jizzy, but about the acne. Imperial Physician Lu frowned, Vaccination? The risk is too great. What if it can't be controlled and it becomes another epidemic? Man Bao nodded and said, that's why I want to study in the western regions. If I can learn this technique, and all the people of Dajin have acne when they are young, how many people can survive the smallpox disease in the future? Imperial physician Lu pondered and asked after a while, so you are going to the western regions? Man Bao nodded. Dr. Lu, do you think this method is feasible? Imperial physician Lu pondered, it's not impossible, but you really have to go to the western regions for this. Man Bao looked at the sky outside the door 45 degrees and said, if you can learn this method, it will be a matter of merit. Imperial physician Lu nodded, indeed. Seeing that he didn't seem to object, Man Bao said, then I wrote the book. It was only then that Imperial physician Lu remembered, and asked, by the way, it's time for our Imperial Hospital to write a book. Ahem, I heard that you have already calculated all the data. Man Bao nodded, do you want Imperial physician Lu? I'll ask Bai Shan a copy for you later. Imperial physician Lu sighed and said, I have been running around for the past 2 months, and this old man feels that his eyes are becoming more and more difficult to use. Now let alone writing, even reading his own pulse case is exhausting. Is that so? Man Bao looked at Imperial physician Lu suspiciously, hesitated for a moment, and said, then I wrote it for you. Imperial physician Lu smiled and nodded, then I will trouble Imperial physician Zhou. You can do more work if you are able. When you write your own essay, help me write it along the way, and I will just copy it when I come back. Man Bao counted the time and found that she had nothing to do recently, so she nodded. It's just that she also put forward conditions, then I will also mention the method of vaccinating pox in the booklet. When the time comes, Imperial physician Lu remember to help me and His Majesty make a guarantee. This method, which has not yet been determined to be effective, did not want to be praised by Tai Lu, but Zhou Mungung agreed to help him write a book, and Tai Lu could only reluctantly nodded and agreed. So the two sides negotiated the terms and dispersed. Man Bao went to the office next door to find Bai Shan. Feng Zonping and most of the students in the Imperial College are here. They are still sorting documents and files. As Zhou Man said, this is neither a home nor a lively market outside. It is not interesting to go out, so it is better to stay in the office. Work. Seeing her coming, Bai Shan gave her a copy of the data and said, what you want? Feng Zonping, who was on the side, smiled and said, Lord Zhou Xiao, I still have the expenditure data of each county after the epidemic prevention, do you want it? Zhou Man immediately said, yes, bring it. Feng Zonping didn't expect that she really wanted it, so he was stunned for a while, and then he found a document in a pile of official documents, and asked with a smile, what do you want this for? After Man Bao took it, he said, take it back to the Imperial Physician's office and keep it there. Maybe it will be useful for teaching students in the future. The student of the Imperial College on the side touched his chin and said, in terms of epidemic prevention, it is justifiable for the Taiyuan Hospital and the Taiyuan Medical Office to do it. By Shandao, there are few people in the Imperial Hospital, and the Imperial Physician Office has not been set up yet. Even if it is set up, there will not be too many people in the local area, so in the future epidemic prevention will still have to come from the county government, but the Imperial Physician Office should take care of it. Responsibility. The others nodded and asked Zhou Man, does the Imperial Physician's Office have this rule? Man Bao said, of course, there is this rule in the Imperial Hospital. The Imperial Medical Office follows it, and everything will come from the Imperial Hospital. Everyone will understand, so this data is really useful for Zhou Man. Others also found it, we also have some data here. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2098. In the end, Manbao hugged her hard. She simply didn't leave, asked the servant to make a table for her, and looked down beside them. When they went back to the doctor's houses, they had to rebuild the brazier. She was embarrassed to use too many braziers by herself. Now the charcoal in Xiaohu is also very expensive. So it's still a house and save money. It took Manbao 2 days to make a table of these data. On the third day of junior high school, he first went to the city gate to send Shiro and the others, and only after he came back did he start writing the book. Refreshing in the morning, suitable for dry brain work. In fact, it is not difficult to write a book about the advice on the method of vaccination, but the most difficult one is the book of Dr. Liu. If the booklet is written well, her booklet will have the effect of multiplying the results with half the effort. So Manbao was very concerned about this, and she thought about it as she slowly polished the ink. Finally, I spread out a large white sheet of paper and thought for a while before writing. Manbao wrote eloquently for a long time, and Bai Shan called her a few times before he woke up and went out to eat together. The disciples of the princes of the nations were also eating, and they said, "We have finished all the official documents that we should deal with, and it's time to prepare to go back to Beijing. Bai Shan, are you coming back with us?" Bai Shan said, "I'll wait for Zhou Man." Manbao said, "There are still 3 patients in the other hospital. When they are all healed, we will go to Beijing with Lord Yang." The other supervisors looked at each other and said, "All right, let's go first. Going back now, even if you walk slowly, you can catch up with the Lantern Festival. This year is not a waste of time, right?" 2 days later, Feng Zongping and other students left, and the doctors who came to Xiaohu to support them left with them. They came together and are still leaving together. The Forbidden Army who escorted them back then followed them back for most of them, and Yang Heshu also sent a few officers to follow them on behalf of Xiaohu city, giving them some local products and sending people out of the city. In the past 2 days, the city finally regained some popularity, and it also looked a little festive. I don't know who spread the news about these people leaving, and many people in the city came to see them off. The folk doctors were gratified with their beards on their faces, not to mention Feng Zongping's students who had not yet entered the officialdom. Seeing that there were so many people along the way, many students were forced to have a lot of eggs in their hands. Agitated. Some students sighed, "Husband, you should be proud of today. In the future, I will be the government side. If I can be so loved by the people, I will have no regrets in this life." There are also sharp-eyed, "Look at Brother Yang." Everyone turned their heads to look at Yang Heshu. He was watching the scene calmly, but there were tears in his eyes. Someone sighed, "This time, Brother Yang is the first, right?" This is not necessarily. These people are grateful to us, but not necessarily all of them are grateful to Brother Yang. What does it mean? I went out to count the household registration, and when I counted the number of deaths, I heard a lot of people complaining, if Brother Yang closed the city gate, so many people in Xiaohu city might not have died. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured into the crowd, and the emotion dissipated a lot in an instant. What are you talking about? If you don't close the city gate, will you let the smallpox go south? The capital has a population of 1 million. We are outsiders. This is not difficult to accept, but people in Xiaohu city will feel that it is because Lord Yang has locked all the smallpox patients in the city, so there are more people infected in the city. I heard that at that time, in order to rob the doctor, many people waited at the door of the pharmacy all night, and in the end people did not die from smallpox, but from freezing. He said, in this world, there are few people who know the truth, know how to sacrifice for others, and even fewer people think about others. Think about how Mrs. Yang got smallpox. Not some people think that as long as Swexian Yang's family is people who are also infected with smallpox will be sent out of the city to seek medical treatment. Some students became angry, it's too much. They don't hate the person who brought the smallpox, but they hate Shuexian Yang. It's just unreasonable to make trouble. By the way, who brought the smallpox? You forgot, it's the youngest son of Niu Shishi. He robbed an orchid. The orchid probably never came to the Central Plains and was not accustomed to the soil and water, so it caused smallpox. This is popular speculation. I heard that Niu Shishi will also go to Beijing after this, in order to sue Brother Yang for the following crimes and put Shang Guan under house arrest. That's why it is said that Brother Yang is in critical condition, not to mention the first merit, it would be good if he is not charged. The following crimes are taboos. But that's also a last resort. If Niu Shishi is reasonable and willing to control the epidemic, how could Senior Brother Yang do such a thing? When I return to the capital, I must publicize this matter. Great merit. That's right, think about the patients we saw when we came. We have made so many preparations, but some people still get infected. That's why we Liuyi never slack off, and we are young and strong so that we don't get sick. Isn't the south of the state a purgatory? Yes, after returning to Beijing, I want to tell my father, but I can't let Shuexian Yang suffer for nothing. Exactly, I also told my brother. Then I'll talk to my grandfather. Feng Zonping quietly slipped back to Baishan, stretched out his hand and said, "How is it, did I do it?" Baishan put a bag of jerky in his hand, and said with admiration, "Sure enough, it's best for you to do this kind of thing." Feng Zonping stuffed the jerky into his bag and hid it well, and said rudely, "Don't scold me around the corner. In fact, if you weren't too close to Yang Shuexian, you would definitely be able to do it." Baishan smiled slightly and said, "When I return to the capital, I hope you will help spread the word." "You don't need to spread it upwards, just talk to the students." "Why, isn't it better to strike while the iron is hot?" Baishan shook his head, "If it's too much, it means to persecute your majesty by relying on public opinion. Actually, I just want to explain to the adults that Brother Yang Shuexian's house arrest is also a forced choice." He emphasized, it was really a last resort. It wasn't just one step forward and one step back to get the job, but one step forward and one step back was the life of millions of people, so the laws and rules at that time were completely out of consideration. Feng Zonping said thoughtfully, "I understand, you want adults to agree with Shuexian Yang's choice, even if he will be punished for it in the end, it will not be extended to other meanings. For example, someone attacked, today he dares to put Shang Guan under house arrest, how can he know that in the future he will not be under house arrest again due to political differences, or even offend the holy car?" Publicizing Yang Heshi's embarrassment among the students would not put pressure on His Majesty, and would allow the officials to consider Yang Heshi's position, so that they would not extend that kind of conjecture. As long as he wins this point, Yang Heshi will not be afraid. Feng Zonping said, "That's not the amount of a bag of jerky. Go back and I'll give you 10 bags. "Don't," Feng Zonping said, "jerky is valuable now, but it won't be valuable when you return to the capital." Now he wants jerky because there is not enough meat in Xiaoshu city. What kind of tasteless mouth is in his mouth? When he returns to the capital, does he still lack meat for young Master Feng? Ha 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 ha, I originally wanted to save a chapter for tomorrow, but forget it. This is really good night, see you in another book. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2099. Feng Zonping and his party braved the cold wind to go on the road. Yin Or did not leave, he was weak, so he had to stay for a while longer and wait for the weather to warm up before leaving. Of course, the guards who followed him wouldn't urge him, and 2 were left to take care of him and protect him. The news of the capital was not delivered to Xiaoshu until the first month of the month, and the emperor summoned Yang Heshu and the bullthorn Shi to the capital to inquire. The imperial hospital and the imperial medical office were also recalled to the capital, and officials from the Dali temple came to invite people in person. One of the last few smallpox patients in Xiaoshu city died, and the others were cured. The other courtyard was cleaned up and down and returned to the original owner. But everyone knows that within a few years, these 3 yards will probably not be inhabited. For this, Yang Heshe personally came to thank the owners of the 3 other courtyards. It was a great kindness that they were willing to take out the courtyards for Yang Heshe to take in patients. The papers of Yang Heshe, the papers of Niu Shishi, and the papers of Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu came to Beijing with Feng Zonping and the others, even 2 days before them. This time, Yang Heshe did not bring Kui Shi and his son with him. He only brought a Wanchen into the capital. He left most of his staff to her, and gave her a jade ring. He smiled and said, "I have arranged for the people sent by my father. Go to Zhuangzi in the field of work outside the city. After I leave, you can take your child to live in Zhuangzi, and close the door and wait for me to come back." Kui took the ring and nodded earnestly. She vaguely knew that those people were not ordinary guards, but part of the Yang family's previous support. However, after the world was peaceful, some people were released into the army. Others stayed at home as guards. Kui's family has declined a bit, but there are still a lot of parts that can be used, not to mention Yang's. With them by her side, she and the child will be safe. Mrs. Kui grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, "Husband, I am waiting for you in Xiaoshu." Yang Heshe responded in a low voice, and said softly, "Xiaoshu suffered a great loss of vitality after this epidemic, so I just left. I am unwilling." He worked hard for 2 years to gain a firm foothold, which made Shuofang County improve a little, so he just left and found another place to start over. And he glanced at Mrs. Kui. Although his wife was fine, she was indeed killed at the time. He couldn't find any evidence, but that didn't mean he couldn't do anything. Some things need evidence to do, but some things don't. Just follow your heart. Yang Heshe clapped her hand and turned to the guest house. In the guest house, Zhou Man and others were also busy packing their luggage. Man Bao was the fastest, because she had a niece and a niece to help her, so she went to find Bai Shan and the 3 after finishing packing. Mrs. Gong San invited me to eat the last meal. A meal of sheep and scorpions, cakes, will you go? Bai Dalan went back with Feng Zonping. Yin he moved to next door to Bai Shan and the others. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "Didn't I just eat it before? Why do you eat it again?" "The one I ate before was deer tendons," Man Bao swallowed, "but to be honest, the deer in Xiaoshu are really delicious, much better than those in the capital. Not only is the deer tendon delicious, but the venison is also delicious." Bai Shan nodded in agreement. "It's still cheap." The two looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. The day before yesterday, Mrs. Gong San invited them to eat deer tendons, so Bai Shan took the opportunity to learn about live deer. Sure enough, unlike the capital, it was much easier to buy live deer in Xiaoshu. Because there are not only wild ones, but also captive ones. You can raise deer by enclosing a piece of grass in the horse farm, and then take it out in autumn and winter and put it on the pasture to hunt for the young masters and young ladies. The money you make is better than selling venison alone. Moreover, the ancestors of many deer here are wild deer, but they have been raised from generation to generation after being kept in captivity, and the taste is better than that of wild deer. Bai Shan bought 2 deer of different breeds, and then rode with Man Bao to the prairie to provide for his little father-in-law. When he came back, he made the excuse that his archery practice was not good enough to let the deer run away. Except for Bai Erlang and Yin Or, no one else had any doubts. Well, the others were just Gong San and Mrs. Gong San who knew that he bought a deer. Because they were afraid that they would be sad, they did not invite venison, but sheep and scorpions. Mrs. Gong San, who thought they liked hunting, said, "Sheep is better than deer. If you want to hunt, then I will let you drive some sheep to the grassland for you to practice your hands." At that time, she will let people chase hundreds of sheep inside, and she will not believe that they will not be able to shoot. Man Bao hurriedly said, "Forget it, we were just a little interested that day, just like hunting." Mrs. Gong San nodded, in fact she was still regretful. The two of them didn't say anything before. To know that they wanted to hunt, she took them to the pasture. She paid for the money and went in for a few laps. Time to play. Instead, I bought a deer to shoot and play on the grassland. It wasn't someone's grassland, and even if I ran away, I couldn't find it anywhere, and I wasted 2 deer. Xiaohu City has now recovered its fireworks, and many shops are open, so Mrs. Gongsan directly invited them to eat at the mutton restaurant she frequented the most. She said, "Don't look at how small this restaurant is, but the sheep and scorpions made are the most authentic, and the pastry cakes are especially delicious, soft and chewy. The taste you ate in my house before was not as good. Alas, you are leaving tomorrow, otherwise I can bring you a few more times to eat." Man Bao had already smelled the fragrance and nodded again and again. They looked out the window and smiled. There are many more people on the street now. Why is this called too much? Mrs. Gongsan also glanced at it and said, it was called too much before the epidemic. At that time, those who came from the north, the east, the west, and the south all passed through our Xiaohu city. Merchants seem to be coming, especially in the past 2 years. Yang County's hands have been loose, and there are less miscellaneous taxes on things entering and leaving the city. No matter where the merchants are from the south, and northwest, they like to come to Xiaohu city to have a first pass, and it becomes more and more lively. There are a lot fewer people now. Not only did people in Xiaohu city die a lot, but some merchants who passed by also died of illness. Xiaohu city suddenly became sad, losing so many merchants in a short period of time, and the world was a little afraid of smallpox, even more so. Will not come. She sighed, and the owner brought up a large iron pot, pulled out the wooden board in the middle of the table, put the iron pot on top, and then pulled out a board from the bottom to set the fire on fire. This is not the same as the sheep scorpion they ate at Mrs. Gongsan's house. Her family served it in a pot after it was made. The stores, is this to be made fresh? It is impossible to make it now. The sheep scorpion has been stewed in the back kitchen for a while, and it is almost ready to eat when it is served. He lifted the lid, steaming up, and the aroma of meat came out. Even Yin Or couldn't help taking a deep breath, only feeling hungry in his belly. The shop owner took out a pot, and immediately squeezed the dough and spread it on the edge of the iron pan. Everyone smelled the fragrance of wheat that was slowly exuding, mixed with the fragrance of meat, and couldn't help swallowing. This sheep scorpion seems to be a little delicious. So hungry, so hungry. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2100. When the wheat cakes were cooked, Mrs. Gongsan ordered them down, dipped them in some soup, and then greeted everyone, "Eat." The sheep scorpion in his family chose the best lamb spine from a sheep, and the meat is of the best quality. The best thing is that there is still spinal cord in it, and it comes out with a gentle push. It sucks up the soup, and it's the most delicious. Man Bao and the others also moved their hands. Yin Or looked at this, then looked at that, and finally picked a smaller piece and tasted it, but it didn't have the smell of sheep mutton. As Mrs. Gongsan said, the meat was very delicious. He had a weak spleen and stomach, so he chewed slowly. By the time he picked out the spinal cord, they had already eaten the second piece of meat. Mrs. Gongsan said, in addition to the meat, the wheat cake is also delicious. It is dipped in soup and has both meat. It is fragrant and has the fresh air of wheat fragrance, and it is not greasy at all. So everyone ate the pancakes. Yin He also took a piece of pancakes, and then Mrs. Gongsan asked those who still wanted to eat the meat to fish out the meat. Thin slices of meat come for them. Mrs. Gongsan said, This is the broth they make with sheep bones. We can still eat the pot after eating the sheep scorpion. In fact, it's the best to eat in the cold winter and the 12th lunar month. It's a pity. Mrs. Gongsan shook her head, shook her thoughts away, and said with a smile, but there are few vegetables now, only radishes and some cabbage, everyone will eat it. But even so, everyone was very satisfied, especially the soup was hanging very well. Man Bao drank a bowl, and a warm air radiated from the inside to the outside. Man Bao contentedly put down the bowl, but he was reluctant to put down his chopsticks, and together with them, he picked up the sliced meat and washed it in the pot. In the end, everyone, including Yin Or, ate to their heart's content, and except for Yin Or, everyone else was exhausted. After Man Bao finished eating, he muttered, "I can't do this next time, it's not good to eat too much." Bai Erlang said, "You said that 9 times out of 10, but next time you will overeat." Except for Yin Or, who can do it every time. Yin Or ignored them, and solemnly thanked Mrs. Gongsan for the hospitality. Mrs. Gongsan was also fed up, and waved her hand, "The imperial physician Zhou has saved my life, don't you just have a few meals? Next time you come to Xiaohu, I will invite you to eat." Well, actually roasted yellow sheep is also good. Eat, but it is wild and hard to catch. If you stay long enough, I will let my child's father take you into the deeper grassland, maybe you can find it. In fact, the yellow sheep that have just entered the autumn are the most delicious. She swallowed her saliva as she spoke, and said, "At that time, the yellow sheep was fattened, and the meat was very tender, brushed with a layer of honey and roasted, that taste." She thought for a while and said, "It's not worse than the sheep scorpion we ate today." Man Bao couldn't help but be fascinated, how delicious it was. Bai Shan also felt that Mrs. Gongsan was a fellow man, so he began to plan, "Actually, if we go to the western regions, it is very likely that we will also pass through Xiaohu." Man Bao and Bai Erlang smiled, "We can supply supplies in Xiaohu at that time." Mrs. Gongsan not only invited them to eat sheep scorpions, but also knew that it would be difficult for them to travel at this time, so she prepared some ingredients for them, including dried meat, and marinated lamb shanks that were frozen outdoors. She said, "I have never traveled far, but my child's father often goes out, and he likes to bring pickled lamb shanks when he goes out. If he is greedy on the road, he can just cut a piece of meat and roast it, which is very convenient." Man Bao was stunned, "Then you have to bring a baking pan." "No," Mrs. Gongsan waved, "just ask your guards to bring a wide knife, and then put it on the knife to bake." The 4 Bai Shan thought about it for a while and found that it was true. It turns out that it can still be like this. So when they went back, they stared at Yang Heshu. Yang Heshu asked helplessly, "Just tell me if you have anything. I will go to you in the morning, and I heard that you are out for an appointment." Man Bao hurriedly said, "Mrs. Gongsan invited us to dinner again, Brother Yang, how many people did you bring to Beijing this time? Take Wan Tian." "Ah, does Wan Tian use a knife?" "Yang Heshu, Wanchen is someone who takes care of my daily life." "What does he do with a knife?" Seeing the disappointment on the faces of the 4, he said, "But this time, the people from your Imperial Hospital and the Imperial Medical Office will also go back. The Yamen side will dispatch some people to escort them, as well as the officers and soldiers from the Dali Temple side. Those with knives will not less." When Man Bao heard this, he was happy and accepted the leg of lamb sent by Mrs. Gongsan with confidence. Yang Heshu didn't know that they had a leg of lamb wrapped in leaves in the box containing the ingredients. He said goodbye to Mrs. Kui early in the morning, and after touching Brother Chi's head, he led the people from the Taiyuan Hospital out of the city. He didn't need to worry about returning to Beijing, all these things were arranged by Dali Temple. This time, Dali Temple sent the imperial decree to investigate Xiaohu by the way, and then sent Yang Heshu and Niu Shishi to the capital. Yes, Niukang, who was still alive, was also asked to enter the capital, and his treatment was not as good as his father. Although he was not put on shackles, he was also taken care of by officials from Dali Temple, along with the free-spirited Zhou man. People are completely different. Near noon, the convoy stopped, and Master Zhao of Dali Temple asked everyone to stop and rest for half an hour, and by the way, have a meal and a drink of water. Man Bao jumped off the carriage and let out the wind with his hands and feet. At this time, there was still a lot of unmelted snow in the woods, and people stepped on it and made a creaking sound. She couldn't hold back her stamp, leaving her dirty footprints on the white snow, looking left and right, and ran away with a little guilty conscience. Imperial Dr. Lu was too cold, so he had asked people to pick up firewood, took out some charcoal they brought with them to set it on fire, and shrank his neck and shouted at her, "Dr. Zhou, didn't you bring a leg of lamb? Why don't you just take it out and bake it for everyone to heat it up? Warm up." Man Bao refused. "It's only been half an hour, even the skin is not cooked, it's boring, let's bake it at night." Sure enough, she said what she said. When they stopped at the inn at night, she took out the leg of lamb and roasted it. Because there were too many people, she couldn't use a big knife at all, and one leg of lamb was not enough for everyone. Niukang sat on the side and stared blankly. If he had disliked it before, he was treated differently these days. Even if his father intended to take care of him, his food and drink were worse than those of his peers. It is said that it is roast lamb leg, and he may be a little greedy when roasting wool. Man Bao glanced at him and saw that there were more than a dozen pockmarks left on his face, which was not really good looking. In fact, even if the dozen or so pockmarks were removed, he would not be considered good looking. She shook her head and asked vaguely, after eating a piece of roast mutton, "Dali Temple brought him into Beijing like this, is His Majesty asking for a crime?" After thinking about it, Bai Shan shook his head and said, "It's impossible to ask him about his crime. After all, he's not a court official. He said he robbed Orchid by force, but in fact, there is no evidence for this. As for the matter of contracting smallpox, neither is he intentionally, at most, I can only hate him, but he can't ask for guilt, his guilt may fall on his father, and Niu Shishi's fault is even greater." He vaguely said, "It depends on how Feng Zonping and the others spread their little stories." See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2101. Feng Zonping and their small talk spread very smoothly, because Yang Haoyi was also in the capital. Compared with the Yang family, Niu Shishi's family background is not worth mentioning at all. Yang Heshu was bullied in Xiaohu, how could Lord Yang sit and watch? So after there was some gossip among the students of Kuazijian, Yang Haoyi quietly added to the flames. Of course, he didn't dare to exert too much force, but the scholars who stayed in the capital knew the cause and effect of the Xiaohu incident, and most of them were guided to side with Yang Heshu. The sound of the wind slowly spread to the court and the palace. This incident did not make a big deal, but everything that should be known is known, and there are some rumors among the people. When the prince heard about this, he said to the princess, "What is there to discuss about this matter? If Yang Heshu is not locked down, let alone last year, we will not have a good year this year. After leaving Xiaohu, people can, if you go to the capital in the south, you can also go east and go down to the south of the Yangtze River, and then the entire Jin dynasty will be finished. He sealed the city, and we are still too busy. If I tell you, they just think too much, there is nothing to discuss about his house arrest of the prefect of Xiaohu." The crown princess said softly, "Your Highness thinks this way, it doesn't mean His Majesty thinks the same way, even His Majesty thinks the same way, there are so many ministers in the court, There are always people who have different ideas, otherwise His Majesty will not let Yang Your Excellency and Niu Shishi went to Beijing to defend themselves. The emperor really thought the same as the crown prince. He and the queen said. Wei Ji said that he was quick to follow the power, but he also said that he did break the law. Hey, after all, whether it is to be a bad person or to open a bad one, all I have to do is to do it. The queen smiled and asked, then is His Majesty going to be a bad person, or is he going to make a bad start? The emperor frowned and said, this matter is really difficult to handle, but I appreciate his decisiveness and courage, but this kind of thing must never be repeated, otherwise there will be no rules and the world will be in chaos. He pondered for a while, and finally sighed, no wonder they all push this matter on me, it's really not a good thing. Let's wait for them to enter the capital first. I have already favored him, and he is always smart, he should know what will happen. Do. The queen knew that the emperor was more inclined towards Yang Heshu. She smiled slightly. It seemed that the emperor did not anger Yang Heshu because of the previous incident of the Yang family. Man Bao and the others walked on the road for 10 days this time, and they felt the excitement before entering the city gate. Zhou Man then cheered with a few younger students. Imperial Dr. Liu, who stopped and waited, swept his gaze and said solemnly, Dr. Zhou, you are a gentleman, you must pay attention to your manners. He said to those students, after entering the city, go back to the imperial physician's office to report, and then go home. You have 3 days of rest, and you will go back to school in 3 days. The students immediately folded their hands and bowed in agreement. The officials of Dali Temple took the pass documents and communicated with the city gate officials. After a while, their motorcade entered through another gate, and there was no need to crowd in line with other motorcades and pedestrians. The officials who entered the Dali Temple at the city gate first came to say goodbye to the imperial physicians at the imperial hospital. I will send the adults here in a moment. Yang Heshu and Niu Shishi father and son are the people they want to bring, and the people from the Taiyuan Hospital and the Taiyuan Medical Office are the way. Imperial physician Liu also didn't want to go to Dali Temple, too bad luck. So he said goodbye with a smile, while Man Bao waved to Yang Heshu, Brother Yang, we'll visit you another day. Yang Heshu nodded slightly at her, and went to Dali Temple with the Dali Temple officials first, and he might have to face the Holy Spirit immediately. Imperial physician Liu had to take the students back to the Imperial physician office, but Man Bao and Imperial physician Zheng were lazy and separated from them at the city gate. Imperial physician Liu could only blow his beard and stare at Zhou Man and greet Bai Shan and the others, and then left with De Ji and his guards. Yin Or went on the same road with them, and also left with the 2 forbidden soldiers. Yin Yu asked, do I need my father to intercede for Lord Yang? After thinking about it, Bai Shan shook his head, forget it, Lord Yin's identity is inconvenient, and I don't know what His Majesty means. If you ask for mercy, there should be connections in the Yang family. Man Bao said, Your Majesty's meaning should be known by the afternoon. Bai Erlang was surprised, the royal court is so quick to file a lawsuit. No, Bai Shan glanced at him and said, you'll know who His Majesty left to speak today. The matter of Xiaohu is not a difficult case, and the disputed areas are also very clear, so I just look at the Holy Will. The Holy Will is, who the Emperor likes and who he doesn't like very much. The Emperor obviously didn't like Niu Bishishi, because after going through the formalities at Dali Temple, Niu Shishi was sent to the post house to live in, but Niu Kong was detained in Dali Temple and temporarily lived in the Dali Temple heavenly prison. Yang Heshu was released home. In the afternoon, the emperor summoned Yang Heshu, and the next day he met with Yang Heshu and Niu Shishi together, at the great court meeting. Man Bao could have gone to the Thai hospital for business trips first, and then applied for a few days of vacation, but in order to watch the fun, no, to care about Yang Heshu, she wore an official uniform and entered the palace early in the morning to attend the grand meeting. Zhou Manlai was attending the great court meeting, and everyone who saw her couldn't help but look at her carefully, Even Wei Ji couldn't help laughing and complimenting her diligence, and asked warmly, "You moved into the palace today?" Man Bao immediately shook his head, "No." She turned her head sharply and said weakly, "Didn't I write a letter earlier? I want to hear what your majesty and the adults have to say." Wei Ji was even more kind, nodded with a smile, "Okay, Sir Joe has worked hard." Under their friendly eyes, Man Bao moved to his seat tremblingly and sat down, then looked back, and asked the magistrate Tang in a low voice, "Brother Tang, what's wrong with them? Always feel weird." The magistrate Tang glanced at her and said, "It has spread throughout the DPRK and China, saying that the little genius Dr. Zhou Tai from the Taiyuan hospital voluntarily went to the western regions to find a way to prevent and treat smallpox for the sake of all the people in the world. Everyone, including your majesty, was very moved." Man Bao's eyes lit up and asked happily, "Really?" Magistrate Tang nodded, "Really?" Magistrate Guo, who was sitting beside him, touched his beard and interjected, "Xiaoguan also admires Lord Zhou, but it's very strange. Magistrate Tang doesn't seem to be very moved." Magistrate Tang looked at Zhou Man with a smile but not a smile. If others don't know, can he still not know? In the past 2 years, Shi and Bai Shan have been asking him about the western regions from time to time, and they have also borrowed several travel notes written in the western regions from him. Obviously, these people have long wanted to go to the western regions, and have little to do with smallpox. Man Bao met the smiling face of the magistrate Tang. Hey, she sat up straight and sat for a while, because the emperor didn't come, she couldn't help turning back to whisper to the magistrate Tang, "Brother Tang, you said that your majesty and will the prince promise me to go to the western regions." Tang County magistrate said, "This is a matter of merit. There is really such a precedent in the western regions. Your majesty must have imagined it, but..." He glanced at her up and down and said, "You are too young, I'm afraid neither your majesty nor Chao Zhong are very relieved." Man Bao thought about it. Zhou Man is too young. It is a good thing for her to have such ambitions, but it is obvious that the western regions are dangerous and all kinds of forces are entangled. The emperor wants to prevent smallpox, but the ultimate goal is to get, not lose a good minister, so Zhou Man wants to go. At least bring a seasoned person, at least someone the emperor and courtiers consider seasoned. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2102. There were a lot of things in the beginning of spring. After the emperor dealt with them one by one, he called Niu Shishi and Yang Heshu, who were waiting in the side hall, for an audience. Man Bao and Magistrate Tang sat up at the same time and looked forward with concern. Yang Heshu came in behind Niu Shishi and knelt down to salute. The emperor sat on the head, looked at the two with heavy eyes and asked, "Xiaohu, smallpox is raging, what do you two say?" Before the officials of the Dali temple went to Xiaohu in person, he thought about taking the mistakes made by Yang Heshu and dividing the guilt by him. But the officials of Dali temple went to Xiaohu in person, saying that it was an investigation, but in fact they were escorting their father and son, and he vaguely felt the attitude of the capital. "I am afraid that the Yang family is operating in the court. In terms of connections and friendship in front of His Majesty, Yang's family is naturally more face-to-face, so Niu Shishi was very quiet along the way. It's just that he was used to Emperor Tiangao being far away, Xiaohu desolate and not close to the capital, but he didn't expect to meet a real Yang Heshu with a backstage. Kneeling here at this moment, thinking of his youngest son who was still imprisoned in Dali Temple, he knew that there was no way to avoid it, and he also had some understanding of the present day, knowing that shirk the responsibility would only make him more angry. So Niu Shishi immediately kowtowed and pleaded guilty, saying that he failed to manage his inner house and educate his son well, so that smallpox raged in Xiaohu. When old Master Tang listened to him, he could not help but let out a cold snort, and the emperor asked, "Niu Shishi, when did Niu Kang's concubine Hu Ji hire a doctor?" He is a master of criminal cases, and he is too lazy to argue with him. He directly asks the key points and sorts things out. The officials sitting at the conference will think for themselves. Niu Shishi paused, but couldn't answer for a while. Old Master Tang snorted again, and simply got up and walked into the hall, asking Yang Heshu, Yang County Magistrate, "What do you say?" Yang Heshu replied, "The doctor invited on September 18. When did Orchid die?" "September 20th night." The old man Tang asked Niu Shishi, when did your son have a fever and pimples, do you know this?" Bullthorn paused and said, "September 22nd is early." "When did the doctor suspect that it was smallpox?" The fist in the sleeve of Niu Shishi clenched tightly and replied, "That day." "Do you know what the doctor said, whether you can isolate your son, report it to the county government, prohibit him from contacting others, and count the people who have contacted him at home?" Niu Shishi lowered his head and fell silent for a while, then slammed his head on the ground. "This minister is guilty, this minister should not take pity on the youngest son and take chances." Niu Shishi, Niu Kong went out to Chunfeng Tower on the 23rd day of September, but didn't come home until noon on the 24th. He spent a whole night and half a day hanging out with people in Chunfeng Tower. "Why didn't your Niu family send someone there?" "Find someone." Niu Shishi's face paled. The emperor slapped the table angrily, and Niu Shishi immediately said, "I know I am wrong, please forgive me." "Sin is to be punished, but we must let the officials know why they are punished," Wei Xiao interjected. "Your Majesty, Yang Heshu is as good as what the Taiyuan hospital said. After the incident, you should draw lessons from it, and it will happen again in the future. This kind of thing will not make such a mistake again, and the 2,289 people who died like this have so little value." The emperor looked at old Master Tang. "Tang Qing, you continue to ask." Lord Tang responded and continued to question Niu Tashi and Yang Heshu. From Niu Kang's illness, to the first time the doctor thought it was smallpox, to the doctor who approached the county government for a whistleblower, and Yang Heshu's series of responses, no matter how big or small, he asked them all. On the side were other officials from the censor's desk to check and fill in the gaps, and the questioning lasted more than an hour. In the end, neither the emperor nor the officials directly convicted the two, but retreated first. The emperor recruited important officials such as Wei Ji and the old Tang, and then went to the study to discuss matters. The others retreated from the dynasty and left, while Yang Heshu and Niu Shishi remained in the palace to listen to the announcement. Manbao walked over to Yang Heshu, gave him all the snacks she had stuffed into her purse in the morning, and whispered, "Eat some if you're hungry." The county magistrate Tang also donated his snacks to him, and said in a low voice, "Seeing that your Majesty is not very angry with you like this, if you are lucky, the results should be available today and tomorrow." Yang Heshu took their things and nodded slightly. "I know, you don't have to worry." Indeed, the results came out soon. Manbao had lunch in the Imperial Hospital, and after applying for leave with Imperial Physician Lu, he went to the harem to see Mingda and Chang Yu first, and then brought the two of them together to see the prince concubine and grandson. Before leaving the palace, a well-informed chamberlain came to report, "Niu Shishi has been sent to the Dali Temple Heavenly Prison, and Lord Yang has been entrusted, but I heard that he may be promoted to Xiaohu Shishi. In fact, the emperor is hesitating, he can't find a suitable person to take over Xiaohu. Xiaohu's vitality is now severely damaged, and it will definitely take a long time to recover, and capable officials can only be transferred from other places, and the transfer will also affect other places." He negotiated with Wei Ji and the others for a long time, but in the end they couldn't find a suitable candidate, and there were still too few talents. In the end, it was Lord Tang who suggested Yang Heshu. The emperor said, "I heard that this time the local gentry in Xiaohu killed and injured many people, and many people resented him for closing the city, cutting off their way, and letting him continue to stay in Xiaohu, I am afraid it will be unfavorable to him. It would be very detrimental to the construction and development of the place to let a person resented by Xiaohu be the prefect of Xiaohu. The emperor did not want to do this. Moreover, the emperor also heard that when the city was closed, someone shot Yang Heshu and his wife and children in order to leave the city, so even to protect him and his family, he was inclined to transfer people away. Yang Heshu was still young. Although he committed the following taboos this time, he did it for the sake of righteousness. The emperor still trusted his personal ability and character, and he wanted to train him. Old Master Tang sensed the emperor's intention to cherish talents, and said after a pause, "Your Majesty, why don't you ask Magistrate Yang?" He said, "Xiaohu's resentment is actually very easy to understand. The culprit is the Niu family. It only needs a little guidance. In this matter, it is not difficult to guide the public opinion. Moreover, the county magistrate Yang is familiar with things in Xiaohu. For the past 4 months, he has also been the deputy governor, so the minister thought that there was no one more suitable than him." Wei Ji also said, "Your Majesty, why don't you ask him, if he is willing to practice this, he will not get less in the future than if he went to the Jiangnan area. Although Xiaohu is desolate, it is under Fengzhou, and it is the most important thing for East, West, North, and South. It will not compromise the talent of Yang Heshu." He knew that the emperor wanted to transfer Yang Heshu to Jiangnan before, and use his hands to take care of the tails of various families left in Jiangnan, where private salt was overflowing, and it was also difficult to manage. But Wei Ji also felt that Yang Heshu was more suitable for Xiaohu at this time. See you at 6 p.m.